The UK is well on its way to becoming a third world country. It has. I heard recently that the British Navy now consists of 8 surface ships. 8 surface ships. This is the navy that was the largest and most powerful in the world till the middle of the Second World War. Only in the middle of the Second World War did the US Navy overtake the British Navy.
Yes, it's the only navy that has more admirals than ships, and twice as many horses as it does tanks.
Right, so they have 8 surface ships. One, in theory, they have one functional aircraft carrier. But again, I just learned recently that that's true as far as it goes, but there is apparently a major problem with the plumbing on this aircraft carrier, such that the servicemen on board cannot take hot showers. So that tells you something.
Yeah,
It's wonderful. It's wonderful.
it's quite pathetic, actually. And I saw an image earlier today, actually, the mayor of Oxford and I guess Birmingham and Manchester, and it all looks like you're in Pakistan or Afghanistan.
London itself.
Yeah.
London itself is well over 50% foreigners. It's becoming more crime-ridden, violent, etc. by the day, quite literally. Have you heard the name Enoch Powell?
No.
You should look it up. Powell, I believe.
Is he related to Jerome Powell?
Jerome Powell? Who's that?
Is the head of the Federal Reserve, I think, or the chairman of the Federal Reserve.
Well, probably not related, but who knows?
Okay.
Maybe way back when. He was a brilliant man. He became the earliest professor in the British Empire at the time. When was this? This was before the Second World War, at the age of 25. He was a professor of classics. He only spoke 12 languages, apparently very proficiently, including Urdu and Hebrew, apparently, which I only learned recently also, not to mention ancient Greek and Latin and what have you. A real maven in those fields, very sharp, incisive mind. But he had a major flaw, which is that he spoke the truth. And when he entered the army in the Second World War as a private, and he ended as a brigadier. In other words, he was recognized as being extremely capable, shall we say. But that's not why he's famous. The reason he's famous is because, the most famous act or speech that he gave, and a political act, was, I believe, in 1968. He gave a speech which became known as the Rivers of Blood speech, although that wasn't the official title that he gave it, in which he predicted with alarming accuracy what would happen to the UK if the mass immigration continued. Well, needless to say, he was completely right. But as a result, the Conservative Party kicked him out of the party. He became an MP. An MP, and he was very, very. Again, he was extremely capable and talented in every respect, and many expected that he would become the leader of the Conservative Party and the Prime Minister. But because of that speech, he was drummed out of the Conservative Party. He continued to be an MP for some time, independent or something, I don't recall. He passed away a few years ago at a ripe old age. But basically, his political career was over. He became, as it were,
Right.
a household term for fascist, racist, what have you. If you read the speech, shudders will go down your spine. How precise, how far-sighted he was. It has all come to pass. I like to think that what has happened to Britain has everything to do with how they treated us in the during the mandate period and after that Ukraine.
Yeah, when the Ukraine war began, I was speaking to Binyamin about this, how it's interesting how all these calamities that are befalling Western civilization are happening 3 to 4 generations after the Shoah and everything that entailed, which is a very interesting number for Hashem to punish them by.
I hear you. At any rate, if you take an advanced civilization, which is the result of actually millennia, not just centuries, millennia of evolution, progress, fine-tuning, what have you. And the British system actually happened to be a particularly efficient and productive political system until it was destroyed by the agent of the WEF and the WHO and all the rest of the W's, also known as Tony Blair. He destroyed the UK finally in 1997. That's when he destroyed the British political system. Was totally upturned.
What did he do then? I'm sorry, again, I don't know so much information.
He created. It's interesting to learn about these things. He created a Supreme Court, for example. So something similar to what Aharon Barak did to this country. Shem Roshaim Yilkov. In other words, one of the central outcomes and almost certainly intentions was to replace the centrality of the authority and the power of Parliament as the sovereign, as the representatives of the people, with what they call in Britain quangos. In other words, committees made up of experts, supposedly, and to increase the authority and the power of the courts and the bureaucracy. Sound familiar?
Yes.
And progressively remove various powers from the hands of Parliament and the elected officials, elected representatives, so that it's a long discussion. The person who can explain these things the very best, and it's worth listening to him, very worth listening to this gentleman. His name is David Starkey, Starkey, British historian. Very interesting chap.
1999, I think he basically got rid of the House of Lords functionally.
Something along those lines.
That was already going for a very long time.
Starkey has various talks on this. You can find on YouTube. He has his own channel now. He's become more of a. He's 80 years old. But he's become a bit of a YouTuber in that sense, so to speak. In other words, he's producing very interesting and intelligent material, and he really understands. He's an example of the true value of studying history. It's not about remembering dates. It's understanding the essence of things, what was going on. He really understands these things, and his criticism of Blair is scathing.
Interesting. I know in America we had these things in, I guess, 1803, but there's a very famous Supreme Court case, Marbury v. Madison, where basically the Supreme Court gave itself the right to judicial review. But they were just more.
Courts have this tendency to grant themselves all kinds of things.
The Federalists were much more clever about how they use this power. So even to this day, people haven't even realized that there's an issue.
It could actually be.
Thomas Jefferson realized it was an issue. He was writing about this even back then. I said that Thomas Jefferson realized that this was an issue, but because the Federalists were so clever about it, he wasn't even able to complain so much because they, at face value, gave him a political win. But they gave him the political win by doing this.
Well, here's a thought for this morning or this evening, wherever, depending where you are. It could be that there is a tremendous amount of truth in the idea, shall we say, take in our case, Aharon Barak, Shem Roshaim Yirkav, Yimach Shemo Zichro.
You say that against Jews? I thought you weren't supposed to say that against Jews.
I don't know where that's written. I think even if that were true, I think he deserves a special status.
The pseudo halachic explanation I heard is that even Yibum makes it so Rashaim, their name isn't erased.
Well, that's a discussion for another time. There are a number of categories which apply to this individual.
Yes.
In Ichot Teshuvah, we've been studying about Meshumadim, Epikorusim,
yes,
Porashim Midarkes Tibur, Moserim. It has to be stated plainly that without the decision by Israel Supreme Court, known here as the Bagatz usually, I think it was in 2018, the Minyonam, in which they stated that the army was not allowed to fire upon Amalekim approaching the border fence between Israel and Gaza. And even if they're up against the fence, you cannot do anything about it. It's just a demonstration. So you can use tear gas, perhaps. Well, without that policy, the recent attack, or 20 months ago now, I suppose, by the Amalekim against us could never have taken place. That's just one example, one small example of the calamities that these people have brought upon us. At any rate, it could be that Aharon Barak is onto something, but not if you believe in democracy. In other words, his idea is that, and this was expressed explicitly just 10 days ago by the recently self-appointed president of Israel's Supreme Court, Yitzhak Amit, Shem Roshaim Yirkav. He explicitly enunciated Aharon Barak's philosophy more clearly than Barak himself has ever done, in which he said that we obviously understand and we know, and only we know what is right and what is wrong, and therefore we can and must decide almost everything. So it could be that in a Torah state, the Beit Hadin HaGadol would have very broad powers. I think it's clear in the Torah that the monarchy also has broad powers, and there would be maybe even a certain tension between these two institutions, and wouldn't be something new in human history. But the idea is that the Beit Hadin HaGadol, supposedly, one would hope, would be basing itself on the Torah and the principles and precepts of the Torah. And being the most knowledgeable and proficient in the Torah, they would be able to tell you what the Torah says about many things that lichora should be binding in a Torah state. But that is because the Torah is accepted as a supreme source of truth. So it's beyond discussion. It's beyond opinion. Whereas in democracy, the rule of thumb is that precisely because people have different opinions and ideas and philosophies, there isn't a system of truth to which all agree. And because we cannot all agree, and there will always be various opinions and ideas and tendencies, we have to simply accept that we will go by the majority, because that's the most reasonable, pragmatic thing to do. Or either that, or have constant civil war or something like that. So we have to agree that we will create a system in which people can express their opinion, and the majority will be in a position to implement their ideas, their policies. So if in a democratic, what used to be called Western democracy, the courts also, the judges also, do not have any unique claim to authority or truth, to know what is more correct, what is the correct view of life in general, religion, how to run society. They're only supposed to work according to the laws that were promulgated by the parliament, which represents supposedly the people, but not because they have some handle on what is on absolute truth. And therefore the powers of a Supreme Court must be well defined and limited. Otherwise you end up with Aaron Barak or Yitzhak Amit, who says we know is what is true, what is correct, and therefore we decide, which is the opposite of democracy. So in a supposedly ostensibly democratic system, that the Aaron Barak model is not that different, although it's less extreme in Britain, but it's similar. That which was invented by Tony Blair, which places the judiciary in a position essentially where they can dictate a great many things, shall we say? And that was his intention all along, Blair's intention all along, but that doesn't make sense if you believe in democracy. If you believe in some system of truth, well, that's very different. Then yes, it makes sense to attach great weight to what the knowers of that truth, and the experts in that system of truth, what they say. So there's a built-in contradiction there.